Harrison Ford isn't just a Hollywood legend. He might actually be the funniest accidental comedian in movie history. Some of his most iconic scenes were completely improvised. Some happened because he forgot the script entirely, and others turned into legendary moments simply because he did not care enough to play them normally. From roasting interviewers to creating unforgettable Star Wars lines on the spot, Ford has spent decades causing pure chaos everywhere he goes. And honestly, that's exactly why audiences love him. For more than 4 decades, Harrison Ford has occupied a unique place in Hollywood history. He's not just one of the most recognizable movie stars ever to appear on screen, he is also one of the most unintentionally hilarious personalities the entertainment industry has ever produced. While many actors spend years carefully polishing their public image, Ford has always seemed almost allergic to celebrity culture. He rarely behaves the way audiences expect him to. He dodges emotional questions, mocks interviewers, forgets co-stars, names on purpose, and somehow turns awkward silence into an art form. Yet that exact unpredictability is what made him such a legendary figure both on screen and off. Whether he was playing the reckless charm of Han Solo, the rugged determination of Indiana Jones, or the exhausted humanity of Rick Deckard, Ford brought something incredibly rare to every role: authenticity. He never sounded like an actor desperately trying to appear cool. He simply was cool, often without even seeming to care. And over the years, some of his funniest and most iconic moments came not from carefully written scripts, but from pure improvisation, frustration, sarcasm, and instinct. One of the earliest examples of Ford's chaotic sense of humor appeared long before he became one of the biggest stars in the world. During the filming of American Graffiti, George Lucas included a simple note in the script telling Ford's character to behave obnoxiously during a scene. Most actors would have interpreted that direction in a fairly predictable way, but Harrison Ford decided to turn the moment into something bizarrely theatrical. Out of nowhere, he suddenly began singing some Enchanted Evening in an overly dramatic voice, completely changing the energy of the scene. "You will see a stranger across a crowded room," he sang with exaggerated seriousness, making the moment hilariously uncomfortable for everyone involved. It was random, strange, and completely unnecessary, which is exactly why it worked so perfectly. Even in those early days, Ford already possessed that strange comedic instinct that would later define so many of his performances. He understood that sometimes the funniest moments happen when someone behaves in a way nobody expects. As Ford's fame grew throughout the late 70s and 80s, so did his reputation for dry, unpredictable humor. Interviews with him rarely followed a normal structure because Ford seemed completely uninterested in giving polished celebrity answers. Instead, he treated interviews like a game where his goal was to make everyone around him uncomfortable in the funniest possible way. That reputation became especially obvious during one late-night appearance alongside Reese Witherspoon. The conversation began innocently enough, with the host mentioning that the two stars knew each other outside the entertainment industry. Most actors would respond with a warm story or a friendly compliment. Ford, however, casually replied, "I've seen her in the parking lot at school." The audience instantly burst into laughter, partly because of how absurdly specific and awkward the comment sounded. Reese herself looked caught between confusion and amusement, while Ford remained completely expressionless, as if he had said something perfectly normal. That deadpan delivery has always been one of his greatest weapons. He rarely smiles after a joke. He simply says something ridiculous and allows the awkward silence to do the rest. Ford carried that same energy directly onto movie sets. During the filming of The Empire Strikes Back, there was a scene where Han Solo repairs the Millennium Falcon alongside Chewbacca. The script included pages of complicated fictional technology jargon filled with made-up machine parts and technical explanations. Ford absolutely hated it. After struggling through the dialogue several times, he reportedly became frustrated with how ridiculous the lines sounded. Finally, instead of reciting the complicated script, he simplified everything into the now legendary improvised dialogue. "No, no, no. This one goes there. That one goes there." Ironically, the improvised version felt far more believable than the original. Real mechanics do not speak in long, dramatic speeches while fixing machines under pressure. They point, gesture, complain, and try to solve problems quickly. Ford understood that instinctively. His frustration accidentally made the scene feel or authentic. That ability to improve scenes through realism became one of his greatest strengths throughout his career. He often found ways to make larger-than-life characters feel grounded and human, even inside massive blockbuster franchises. His interviews with Conan O'Brien became another perfect example of Ford's unmatched comedic timing. Over the years, Conan interviewed hundreds of celebrities, but Ford always stood out because nobody, not even Conan himself, could predict what he would say next. During one appearance, Conan enthusiastically explained how podcasts work and told Ford that podcasts allow guests to say absolutely anything they want. Without missing a beat, Ford looked directly at him and calmly replied, "Well, F you." The timing was flawless. Conan immediately collapsed into laughter while Ford sat there completely serious, refusing to acknowledge how funny the moment was. That contrast between absurd humor and total emotional detachment is what makes Ford so endlessly entertaining. He never behaves like someone trying to get laughs, which somehow makes him even funnier. Some of Ford's greatest contributions to cinema happened through tiny improvisations audiences barely even notice consciously. In The Empire Strikes Back, there's a subtle moment where Lando Calrissian escorts Leia through Cloud City. According to the original script, Leia was simply supposed to accept Lando's arm politely, but Ford added a small moment of jealousy by having Han suddenly step in and offer Leia his arm at the exact same time. It lasts only seconds, but it tells audiences everything they need to know about Han Solo. Beneath all the swagger and sarcasm, Han is insecure, possessive, and emotionally messy. Ford understood that these tiny human reactions make characters memorable. Decades later, when Ford returned to science fiction for Blade Runner 2049, he brought that same unpredictable energy into the film's promotional tour. Ryan Gosling quickly discovered that doing interviews with Harrison Ford was basically an endurance challenge. Throughout multiple interviews, Ford repeatedly pretended he could not remember Gosling's name. Ryan, interviewers would correct him. Brian, Ford would respond immediately. Gosling would patiently repeat his name, only for Ford to intentionally get it wrong again moments later. The joke somehow never stopped being funny because Gosling looked genuinely exhausted trying to survive Ford's relentless sarcasm. Their awkward chemistry became one of the highlights of the entire press tour, with Ford constantly behaving like a mischievous older brother, tormenting him for entertainment. Sylvester Stallone experienced something similar while filming The Expendables. Surrounded by nearly every legendary action hero imaginable, Stallone probably expected massive egos and nonstop intensity. Instead, he found himself repeatedly reminding Harrison Ford of the villain's name during scenes. "Stonebanks," Stallone would explain. "Snowcone," Ford would reply. Every correction only made things worse, and eventually, the entire situation spiraled into chaos. Moments like these reveal something fascinating about Ford. He genuinely seems to enjoy disrupting overly serious environments. The more dramatic or intense the situation becomes, the more likely he is to undercut it with humor. That attitude extends to the way he discusses his own career. Most Hollywood legends eventually begin speaking about their artistic legacy in grand, emotional language. Harrison Ford has never appeared interested in doing that. During one interview, after being asked about his long-term ambitions following Star Wars, Ford casually shrugged and said, "To become rich and famous." The audience exploded laughing because the answer felt brutally honest in a world where celebrities usually pretend they were motivated purely by artistic passion. Ford has always seemed refreshingly unwilling to romanticize Hollywood. Even emotional blockbuster moments sometimes became accidental comedy around him. During The Force Awakens, there's a scene where Han Solo drops his parka before walking deeper into Starkiller Base. Later, Chewbacca unexpectedly hands the coat back to him. Ford's confused reaction in the scene was genuine because actor Joonas Suotamo improvised the gesture unexpectedly. That tiny unscripted interaction made the friendship between Han and Chewbacca feel more authentic than pages of dialogue ever could. It felt like two old friends communicating through years of shared history rather than scripted exposition. One of Ford's funniest modern viral moments happened completely unexpectedly during an awards show speech. Actress Jessica Williams was attempting to deliver a heartfelt, emotional tribute when Ford casually wandered behind her carrying a bag of chips. Instead of quietly exiting, he simply stood there eating loudly while cameras rolled. Williams tried desperately to continue speaking seriously well. Ford casually chewed chips in the background like someone lost in a grocery store aisle. The contrast between her emotional speech and his complete indifference instantly transformed the moment into comedy gold. Ford's improvisational talent also helped define Indiana Jones as a character. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, Marion tells Indy he no longer resembles the man she once knew. Ford responds with the now iconic line, "It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage." That line was not originally in the script, but it perfectly captured Indiana Jones in a single sentence. He is not old because of age, he is exhausted because of experience. Bruised knuckles, dangerous adventures, endless running, fighting, and surviving have worn him down physically and emotionally. Fans who meet Harrison Ford often discover that admiration offers no protection from his sarcasm. During one interview, a fan proudly admitted he had posters of Ford hanging on his bedroom wall growing up and even brought old photographs hoping for autographs. Most celebrities would respond emotionally. Ford simply stared blankly before saying, "Not much to answer there." The brutal awkwardness instantly made the moment hilarious. Somehow, Ford's complete refusal to follow normal celebrity behavior only makes fans love him more. While filming Blade Runner 2049, Ford accidentally punched Ryan Gosling for real during a fight scene. According to both actors, Gosling failed to dodge properly during choreography, resulting in Ford's punch connecting directly with his face. Ford later joked that the accident was Gosling's fault for being in the wrong place. Still, he apologized properly by bringing Gosling a bottle of scotch afterward. The entire story somehow became even funnier because both actors told it completely differently during interviews. One of the most iconic scenes in movie history exists purely because Harrison Ford became violently sick during filming. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones was originally supposed to participate in an elaborate sword fight against a master swordsman. The scene required complicated choreography and multiple takes. Unfortunately, Ford was suffering from severe dysentery while filming in Tunisia and barely had enough energy to stand upright. Exhausted and miserable, he reportedly suggested simply shooting the swordsman instead. Steven Spielberg agreed, and the result became one of the most legendary moments in cinema history. Audiences erupted laughing when Indiana casually pulled out his revolver and ended the fight instantly. What began as a practical solution accidentally became one of the defining moments of the character. When Ford returned as Han Solo decades later in The Force Awakens, audiences felt overwhelming nostalgia seeing him back inside the Millennium Falcon. During interviews, Jimmy Fallon asked whether putting the costume back on made him emotional. Ford instantly replied, "No, I got paid." The audience exploded laughing because the answer perfectly destroyed the sentimental atmosphere everyone expected. Again, Ford refused to behave like a traditional movie star. In Temple of Doom, another memorable improvised scene happened during a card game between Indiana Jones and Short Round. Originally, the scene was meant to be simple background activity while Willie screamed nearby. Instead, Ford and young actor Ke Huy Quan began improvising accusations of cheating. "You cheat, Dr. Jones. You're cheating." Their playful chemistry felt so natural that Steven Spielberg kept the scene despite George Lucas reportedly disliking it. The moment added warmth and realism to their relationship, making them feel less like scripted characters and more like genuine companions. Ford's honesty about money also became legendary over time. When discussing his return for Blade Runner 2049, he summarized the entire negotiation process with brutal simplicity. "They asked if I was interested. I said, how much?" Most actors carefully describe emotional connections to beloved characters. Ford openly admits he likes getting paid. Strangely, audiences respect him more for it because it feels honest. Another unforgettable moment came during Star Wars: A New Hope, when Han Solo awkwardly tries convincing stormtroopers that everything is fine after a shootout aboard the Death Star. The panicked delivery became iconic precisely because Ford sounded genuinely unprepared. "Everything's perfectly all right now. We're all fine here now. Thank yous. How are you?" The awkward pauses and nervous rambling made Han Solo feel incredibly human. Depending on the version of the story, Ford either forgot the lines, intentionally made them messy, or barely memorized them. Regardless, the scene became legendary. Even in his 70s and 80s, Ford's humor never faded. During a tribute honoring composer John Williams, Ford walked onto stage and immediately joked that the Star Wars music followed him everywhere, even during his colonoscopy. The audience collapsed laughing before he had even fully started his speech. And then there is perhaps the most famous improvised line in film history. In The Empire Strikes Back, Leia tells Han Solo, "I love you," moments before he is frozen in carbonite. The script originally had Han replying, "I love you too," but something about the line felt wrong. Director Irvin Kershner finally told Ford to respond naturally. Ford paused, looked at Carrie Fisher, and quietly replied, "I know." That single improvised sentence transformed the scene forever. It perfectly captured Han Solo's personality, confident, vulnerable, sarcastic, and emotionally terrified all at once. Decades later, it remains one of the most iconic lines ever spoken in cinema. Ford also improvised another classic Han Solo line in A New Hope. After Luke celebrates a successful shot during battle, Han immediately replies, "Great kid, don't get cocky." Again, the line perfectly defined Han's personality. He cannot allow sincerity to exist for too long without covering it in sarcasm. Even now, well into his 80s, Harrison Ford continues stealing interviews effortlessly. During a press conference, one reporter admitted she still found him extremely attractive. Most actors his age would respond modestly or shyly. Ford looked directly at her and replied, "I've been blessed with this body. Thanks for noticing." The room exploded, laughing once again. That is the strange magic of Harrison Ford. He never appears desperate for attention. He rarely tries to charm audiences directly. He often looks bored, sarcastic, irritated, or completely detached from Hollywood culture altogether. And yet somehow, that exact authenticity made him one of the most beloved stars in cinematic history. Because underneath all the deadpan jokes, awkward interviews, and sarcastic one-liners is something audiences instantly recognize as real. Harrison Ford never feels manufactured. He feels human, flawed, grumpy, unpredictable, and effortlessly funny. And perhaps that is why, after all these decades, nobody else in Hollywood has ever quite managed to replace him. Harrison Ford proves that sometimes the most unforgettable moments in cinema happen completely by accident. So if you want more videos covering legendary actors, hilarious interview moments, and iconic movie improvisations, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.